This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew Zink, and welcome to the unofficial Intergalactic Heretic Prophet podcast, the world's first podcast dedicated solely to the upcoming video game Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. That is, at least according to my Spotify and Apple Podcast search. So on this first episode, we're going to explore everything you missed in the first trailer. The first and only trailer, I might add, so far. The first and only trailer was released in December of 2024. It's now been 7 months since then. There's been a couple small, unsubstantiated leaks, bits and pieces of information here and there, but not much else. So we're going to dive into this trailer because there's really a lot to find, but you have to look really closely for it. In typical game developer Naughty Dog style, they hit a lot and you have to look close. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so to start, this trailer opens up to show the planet Semperia and its moon. So Semperia appears blue right away. And, Semperia seems to have some clouds forming up in a really strange shape, and you're looking at it from space, and it kind of resembles a spiral of a hurricane. And so other than that, that's kind of all you can see. So the camera starts to zoom out, and you see a moon of Semperia that has been clearly significantly damaged because there's a literal huge chunk missing from it, as if a meteor or an asteroid or something went through it. And you can tell that this is not natural damage or its natural shape, because there's several deep cracks going from the impact spot to the rest of the moon. So what's interesting about this is by the time the camera zooms out and you see the moon of Semperia, Semperia is now clearly bright red, different from the blue you saw at first. And the red is kind of different from Mars, as we would know. Mars is more of like a pale red, and this is kind of a bright red. So what happened to cause the damage on this moon? We just don't know yet. So, we'll keep going here. So the camera keeps panning out, and eventually what comes into sight is a red Porsche spaceship. You did not mishear that. That is a Porsche spaceship, which is really exciting and cool. And so on the front left wing of the ship, you can make out the words "no step." Just a small little detail I think is really cool that they put in there. And then on the back of both wings of the ship are the numbers 984. And then the camera pans back all the way so you can see the full ship from the back. And you can see on the back, it's written the Porsche spaceship model. It's model 984 Tempest NDX. So we don't really know what any of that means as of now. But I think it's really cool because they're already establishing, the existence of different spaceship models, right away in the trailer. An NDX, I was thinking about that. Maybe that's Neil Druckmann, with something else as an X there. That's the head of Naughty Dog Studio, for anyone who doesn't know. So then eventually, the camera kind of flips inside the ship, and it starts with an anime playing on TV. It's a TV inside the ship. And if you pause it and look really closely, it shows you that the video is 32 minutes and 16 seconds in. And it says video disc 2. And so what's cool about this is that it's clearly a CD input. This is not streaming that they're playing on this. And, you know, already it's starting with what we know about the theme of the game, which is that, you know, it's set in the 1980s alternate timeline, and then it deviates from the 1980s 2,000 years in the future. So the tech is similar, you know, the music is kind of similar to the 80s, and you kind of see that on the CD input that's playing right away. So the next sequence begins, and it's the main character, Jordan A. Munn, shaving her head at a sink and mirror. So there's just a couple smaller things I noticed here that I just haven't heard anybody talk about. So that's what we're going to do here. You know, to the left of the sink is actually a hand soap dispenser. And then there's 2 shelves, like a top shelf and a bottom shelf. And they're both clear. And the bottom shelf, you can make out 2 bottles of toiletries. You know, you don't know if it's shampoo or shaving cream or, you know, soap or something else. And it's not well lit enough on the top shelf to see what it is. I liked this just because, again, in typical Naughty Dog style, they're really just giving you a high level of detail in each environment. I don't think the presence of hand soap is necessarily breaking news, but it is showing you that they're really thinking about what would life be like on a spaceship and what are things people would want. And you'd want hand soap in your normal life, and so you'd want it on a spaceship too. That makes sense. So then in the top right corner of this bathroom appearing room, there's a small red light up there, and you know, the purpose of it's unknown. It caught my eye because I just love spaceship stuff. It almost looks like it could be an outlet of some kind. It looks like it's something else in addition to a light, but we just don't know. And what's curious about it is that it's not really big enough to actually light up the whole room. So, you know, I'm thinking that red light could be part of some sort of an emergency system in the ship. You know, if there's low oxygen, a breach in the ship somewhere, or something else that, you know, causes critical damage to the ship, and the red light will start to go off. Again, just cool that they're really thinking very intently about what type of systems would be on a spaceship. So, you know, then the camera kind of zooms in on Jordan. You can kind of see that Jordan has a bunch of tattoos. I think I might cover those tattoos in another episode after this, because you could probably pull a lot of meaning from those. And you can see that Jordan is wearing, she has a necklace on, and it kind of has the same silver sort of chain that people wear as dog tags, at least is what we would know, you know, in some sort of military service. So, you know, Jordan could have acquired them herself from someone she knows, or maybe they were a family heirloom, something that was passed down to her. We just don't know yet, but I did notice that on her. And you can't see what the dog tags say because it dips down below her tank top. So you can't even technically see that there are dog tags, but based on the chain, it's implied. So at this moment, Jordan receives an incoming call, and she starts rummaging around for a remote to accept it, and the call will be accepted on the TV that was playing the anime. So as she's rummaging around looking for the remote, the camera actually pans over a coffee table of hers, and truly this was like 4 or 5 seconds, you know, really short. But if you pause it and look really close on the coffee table, you can see a couple things. There's the presence of 5 poker chips. There's 2 red ones with the number 100 and a blue one with the number 50, and then the 2 more blue chips are kind of hidden from sight. You can tell that they're blue, but you can't see the numbers. One of them has the number 0 on the end of it, so that would be consistent, you know, with the blue ones all being 50, the red ones being 100. And so what's interesting about this is, you know, we know that Jordan was part of a group called the 5 Aces, and that's part of the main story. She's kind of looking for them, and they disbanded. So, you know, maybe those chips are sentimental to her. Maybe they represent the 5 Aces in her mind, or maybe they... I don't know, maybe each member of the group had a chip, and now she has them all. We just don't really know yet. But cool to see them there. And the chips are kind of on top of what very clearly looks like a receipt, at least what we would all know as a receipt. And you can make out a barcode on the receipt. So, this could signify maybe Jordan was gambling somewhere, and that tells us that, that exists in this universe, and that Jordan would be interested in that. Or it's a receipt from something else, and we just don't know yet. But I thought it was cool that they add all that. And so next to the chips is a pile of magazines or comic books. You can kind of make out a comic book on top. You can't make out the title of the comic book, but it's very comic book type font on it, and you can make out 3 shapes flying in space, and they appear very cartoony and in a comic book style, and they almost look like pterodactyls, the 3 shapes, but they could be other spaceships. That's obviously most likely. One of them kind of reminds me of a Naboo starfighter, actually, from Star Wars Episode 1. But, other than that, you can't really see much more from that comic book or the pile on it. So then on the back of the coffee table, right next to the pile of comic books or magazines, is a large, it could be a book. It could also be a poster, but you just can't tell because you can't really see the thickness of it. And on the front of it, the cover, is this huge and symbol. Like if you're saying Jack and Daxter, but you don't want to spell out and, you use the Control-7 key on your keyboard, and it gives you that little and symbol. So I thought that was just a minor detail, but I mean, what is that? Maybe Jordan's brushing up on grammar and vocabulary, which would tell us something about her. We just don't know what that is, but they clearly put it there for a reason. So next to that book, on the back of the coffee table, is a folded over newspaper. And again, this is the type of stuff that I start to find really fascinating in, lore and trailers and stuff like this. You can make out the headline on the newspaper as the price of crystal. And again, you have to pause the trailer and look really close. And helpfully, it's good to have a nice monitor too that's big enough so you can look close and it's clear. But so it says the price of crystal as the headline. And the front page image appears to be a futuristic looking car. And then there's a sub headline that is kind of hard to read, but you can make out the words "to string of" in the middle of the headline and not really much else. So, it could be saying something like, this person or this book is connected to string of, heists or robberies around this. So again, I thought that was really cool because they're kind of telling you that crystal as a resource exists in this universe. And, we just don't know what it is yet, but it's clearly some sort of a valuable commodity. It could be used as fuel for ships, or maybe it's valuable in the same way that we would know it to be in, our modern day of just, it can be used for jewelry or other various aesthetic things that are pretty, so people like it. But we don't know. But they're establishing all this, and I think it's cool that they're just starting with that. So from here, the camera pans left, and Jordan is still searching for the remote. And, it starts to pan over to Jordan's bulletin board. So it's this big bulletin board that has, a lot of different stuff on it. And, there's going to be a lot to cover here. So I'm going to try and go through quickly just each thing that's on the bulletin board. So, you can tell right away that there's handwritten sticky notes, photos, newspaper clippings, maps, and they're held up with tape and small red magnets. At first, I thought they might be pins, which that didn't make much sense to me because the bulletin board looks metal, like it looks magnetic, so it wouldn't make sense to be pinning stuff into it. And then later in the trailer I spotted some magnets, and you can tell that they're magnets. There's no pin on the bottom side. So over the next 10 seconds as the camera pans over the bulletin board, along the bottom of it, you can make out lots of spare red magnets. You can make out 3 pens or markers, different types of colored sticky note pads, and scissors. So again, just a really cool level of detail. They're trying to show you that Jordan is clearly, committed to this and has a plethora of office supplies available on her spaceship to do all this. So at this point, the camera pans up and you can see the right-hand side of the bulletin board. I kind of broke this into like 3 different sections of the bulletin board. There's the right-hand side of it. And right away, you can see a wanted poster with a handwritten sticky note on it that reads, there's a word that kind of looks like Peru, but I couldn't make out what it was exactly. There's a word, and then it says paid off Galactipole. Not a, and then there's 3 more words I just can't make out. But the presence of Galactipole is significant because, and I'll get to this, in a couple minutes, but later on in the bulletin board, you can see that Galactipole is like, an intergalactic law enforcement agency. So, small sticky note there, but already setting that up. And it's taped up, that sticky note, it's taped up with a wanted poster. It's a photo of a man with a longer black beard and hair who seems to be holding a drink and no other info. So something about paying off Galactipole and this man who presumably Jordan is looking for, and is connected to her in some way. Presumably she's writing all these sticky notes herself, of course, too. So right next to that is a photo of mountainous terrain with 2 moons present in the overhead sky, and a handwritten yellow sticky note that reads, "Who took this photo?" So one cool thing I thought about this photo is just that you can kind of make out 2 moons in the photo, and I noticed 2 moons in the anime that was playing on the TV earlier. So I'm not sure how or why that would be significant, but it does seem like they're drawing up a theme here, sort of. So right next to that, the photo of the mountainous terrain, is another photo of a man with maybe a mustache and a handwritten sticky note that reads, "Timestamp is 12 years old. This is a dead end!" ! So again, it's a different person, and Jordan is clearly tracking them, and obviously very good at getting information and running it down. So then there's a yellow sticky note on top of another photo right next to it of what could be the same person, but it's hard to tell. And that sticky note is kind of hard to read too. So at this point, the camera's panning over, and you're still on the right-hand side of the bulletin board overall, but you get to this big star map, and it's pretty clearly a star map. And what was so fascinating about this is truly, like, if you paused it 1 second and looked at the map, it was slightly blurry. But if you let half a second go by on the YouTube trailer and pause it again, everything's totally clear. It's almost as if Naughty Dog is challenging you to look at this frame by frame and second by second, because there's just these moments where there's this clarity that just flips over to everything. And I found this with many different notes and everything too. So if you're curious, I encourage everyone to go look at it on YouTube. So the star map has named systems, including Megara's Trance, Challenger, Nario Shade. I did notice that Nario Shade is covered by a sticky note, so I don't think Nario is the full name of it. So continuing on, Rain, Witch, Petrilnos, Bo's Bow, Gorgon, Diorenius, and then out on the edge of the star map, where there's no planets or stars, it's titled Nameless Void. So again, I mean, this isn't like groundbreaking information for the game or anything, but I think it's just really fascinating from a sci-fi perspective that they're already laying out, different star systems and different planets and different star clusters, different solar systems. We don't really know what each of these mean, if they are solar systems versus one planet. But even just having nameless void, that tells us, okay, that's what they call in Mass Effect, they kind of call it dark space. Different sci-fi worlds have different names for beyond what is explored. So in this, it's nameless void. And so again, it's telling you that they're really building out this world already. So at the bottom of the star map is a pinned up piece of graph paper, truly graph paper like you would see in high school, or something like that, with writing that says security cam login, username, and it looks to me like N Johnson ! So that's the security cam login. And then next to this is a photo of a futuristic car that appears to have gone through a building window. And then there's just no other notes with it at all. So again, somehow it seems like Jordan has obtained the login to a security cam somewhere and gotten a hold of a photo of this car. So they're just giving you excessive details, showing you how dedicated to this search Jordan is. And we still don't really know fully what the search is. Well, we do know a part of it that we'll get to shortly. So then, continuing on, and this is all pinned up on top of the star map, there's another handwritten yellow sticky note that reads, known VIN variants. And there's 4 sets of codes that could be coordinates, but that's really all there is on this sticky note. So again, establishing VIN variants. We don't know what that's going to be, but they're just continuing to flesh out, the more sci-fi lore parts of this universe. And I think that's pretty cool. So next to the VIN variant yellow sticky note is a piece of paper that reads Hypergate. And you actually can't see fully that it says gate at the end, but later on you see Hypergate listed out multiple times. And it's the same font and everything. So that's definitely what it is. And it says Hypergate with what looks like a chart of 20 lines. And 2 of the lines are highlighted with blue highlighter. Just to give a frame of reference, it most reminded me of, you know how sometimes people with office jobs are given like a schedule of each like week or bi-weekly when their paycheck will arrive, and then some people will kind of like highlight each line after they get it throughout the year. That's what it looks like with this, but you just can't really tell. You don't know what Hypergate is, and you don't know what this chart is. I mean, Hypergate, it could be some sort of a traveling mechanism. It could be a corporation that tracks starships from planet to planet, and you have to register or pay a fee to have a license or something. And, you get a number that goes along with it. We just don't know what any of that is, but they're just continuing to flesh it out. So next to this is a close-up photo of a man with a beard and mustache and a red square drawn around his head, presumably by Jordan again. Continuing left on the star map is a newspaper article that says, Evening News, 5 Aces Mastermind, dead or hiding? ? So, that's pretty significant right there. And then it says yellow sticky note posted. There's a yellow sticky note that's posted with this, and it says, reporter's data drive at Crescent System Orange. So again, I mean, Jordan is clearly very on top of this, going after a reporter's data drive. Presumably the person who wrote this story. So that's interesting and good to know. So the final 2 items posted on top of the star map here is a white piece of paper that is clearly a list, but every item on it has been crossed out and you can't see what any of it reads. The other item right here on top of the star map is an aerial photo of what looks like several futuristic vehicles driving down a seedy looking futuristic alleyway. I really loved this photo. It's such a small thing, but it kind of reminded me of just like Blade Runner or even Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, the very beginning of the movie where they delve into Coruscant's underground. That's explored more throughout other Star Wars lore. So I thought that looked really cool. So this kind of covers, the whole star map part of the bulletin board, the last part of the right-hand side of the bulletin board is above the star map. There's more stuff pinned up there. And directly above the star map is a newspaper article. And it's from the Eclipse Telegraph. They gave the newspaper a name. And it has a logo, too. And a headline that reads, "Thief Terrorizes Blue Star System Business District." So, again, I just love this because they're creating newspaper names already. There's something called the Blue Star System that exists, and the Blue Star System has a business district. So I'm just really excited to see, how much of this gets fleshed out. As far as what we know right now, Jordan, I don't think we're ever going to see beyond Semperia in this game, but they're clearly building a world here that I hope will, result in multiple games later on, since they're establishing so much lore already. So next to this article, the Thief Terrorizing Blue Star System Business District article, is a handwritten green sticky note. Red alert, everyone. Green sticky note, not yellow, that reads, "Track the clothes." Yes, that's "track the clothes," which is crossed out, followed by "someone paid off." So, there's just nothing else we see there. But that's what it says. And clearly Jordan thinks that someone was paid off, as far as something was concerned around this. So then there's another piece of paper that is cut off by the camera. We can't really see. And again, this is above the star map we were talking about before. But we can see it's hole punched all the way down on the right-hand side. So that tells us they do have binders in the future. They have binders and they hole punch. That's good to know. Right next to this is a news article from Spotlight Sentinel that reads, "Third largest safety deposit ship discovered empty weeks after theft." And kind of underneath this is a photo of a woman with blonde hair and another red square around her face. And also partially underneath this photo is a green sticky note that reads, "Find fence for jewelry," which is crossed out, and the word "dead" is written underneath. So a couple things there. Spotlight Sentinel, another news organization, another newspaper that exists apparently. Third largest safety deposit ship discovered empty weeks after theft. So clearly Jordan is tracking a number of different heists that have been happening in different places. Then this woman with the blonde hair, we don't know who she is, but the green sticky note that says "Find fence for jewelry," it almost makes you think her name could be Fence or someone else's name is Fence, but we don't know what Fence means in this context here. And then, that's crossed out and the word "dead" is written underneath. So, it would make most sense if Jordan's referencing a person here, but we just don't have any more than that. So now we're about to get to the middle of the bulletin board, which kind of goes by faster. So I am now going to teleport us to the mid-break of the show. Okay, welcome to the mid-break of the show, everyone. At each mid-break of the show on each episode, we will read each review, comment, question left for us on Spotify, the Apple Podcast Store, in each episode of the Spotify episodes, where you can leave comments or you can reach out to us on our social media platforms and via email, and I'll try to mention it all here and shout you out for reaching out to us. Since this is the first episode of the podcast and there are no reviews to be left yet, I'm going to read a nice text message my older brother Kenneth sent to me in response to listening to an early draft of this. So Kenneth writes, "I'm 15 minutes into the podcast. Awesome work. Honestly, I have no notes so far. You're a natural. You speak well. You have a nice voice for podcasting. You're pretty concise while still adding in some unforced humor. I'm so proud of you." Wow. Thanks, Kenneth. That is really cool of you to say. Still kind of can't believe this is happening. And upon listening back to this, I heard myself, just say or a couple more times. And it's really weird listening to yourself speak. And I thought about re-recording the entire episode and then just decided, it's the first time. I'll get better as I go. And I hope everyone doesn't mind. So for the second part of the mid-break, each show, I'm just going to say one thing that I think is really cool and I'm excited for that's coming up in this game. So, my first thing in this episode is the purple plant that you can see behind the first enemy Jordan encounters at the end of the trailer, which will be part of this show as you get past the mid-break, everyone. I don't know what that purple plant is. I don't know what it's doing there, but it does look cool, and I'm excited to find out what it is. Okay, back to the show. Okay, everyone, and we're back from the mid-break. Thanks for tuning in. We're back to the middle of the bulletin board, and we're going to be moving right along through this. So the middle of the bulletin board is kind of dominated by a photo of the 5 aces, and you can kind of see who the 5 are. And this is kind of, I think this is the main thing that people pulled away from the trailer. When you see it, you know, it's the main thing that stands out, and it's kind of hard to see everything else unless you really pause and look at it for 2 hours like I did. So around the photo of the 5 aces, the photo has a blonde woman from the Spotlight Sentinel article that we just referenced, and what appears to be the mustached man too from one of the earlier photos. There's a separate photo pinned on top of it with just Kumail Nanjiani's character and the red square around his face. So we know that Kumail Nanjiani, is voicing a character in this game, and there's a character that's based around his likeness. And so Jordan is clearly tracking him specifically. And then above that photo is what looks like, what looks like a graph or map, and it's labeled Hypergate Net. So again, we don't know much else beyond that, but it looks like a map kind of connecting certain systems. And we just don't know what it is. So to the left of this is another Hypergate sheet that has another chart and more highlighted lines, like almost tracking arrivals or departures. We just don't know, more beyond that. And so to the left of this, and this is all still in the vicinity of the 5 aces photo, to the left of this is a photo of a man with sunglasses hanging from his shirt. He has a red square drawn around his face, just like the other ones. Clearly Jordan's tracking them. He has a blue sticky note taped to him that reads "New lead!" ! Check beta tertia sector. So yeah, blue sticky notes. That's 3 different colors sticky notes we've seen so far. Jordan's clearly very organized. Good to know. And there's a new lead around this character. This character could be the person being played by Stephen A. Chang, who played Jesse in The Last of Us. I'm going to do a separate episode about all the information we know about the characters after this. But that is what's there. And then, so partially underneath the 5 aces photo up on the bulletin board is a news article from the Perseid Express with a motto that says "News at the speed of sound." Not a bad motto, actually. And so we've now got I think 3 different news organizations, newspapers that have been created here. So that's cool to know. Under the motto are sections in the paper in which you can actually make out it says news, sports, culture, politics, intergalactic phenomena, and finance. So again, really cool that they're just establishing that all this exists in this world. Intergalactic phenomena. I'd definitely be reading that section in a heartbeat. So the biggest part of this newspaper is the headline, and it reads, "What happened to the 5 aces?" The subheadline reads, "For years, these notorious intergalactic criminals were unstoppable. Then suddenly, the crime spree ended." And that's all it says. So again, it's setting up the main plot here that Jordan is tracking them, and we know that Jordan was part of the 5 aces, or at least somehow had some connection or relation to them. So to the right of this article, and again, all this still in the vicinity of the 5 aces photo that we have here, to the right of the article is a piece of yellow notepad paper that reads "Potential aliases," and then it's a list of names: Caesar Maceda, Jasper Burke, that's crossed out, Tyron Dusmith, Etienne Renardet, Jerry Landon, that's crossed out too, Atticus Vasilio, and Randall Stevens. And then next to this are 2 ID cards. They almost look like employee ID cards, and one of them you can kind of make out, it says name E.N. Renardet. So that would match up with, one of the potential aliases that Jordan has written out on the notepad paper. And then it says age, 40-something, eye color. You can't make that out, what the eye color is. And then it says height, and you can make out 5 foot, and you can't tell how many inches. And so the second ID card you can make out has the same info, but it's Tyron Dustsmith instead. And so it says Tyron Dustsmith, age 39, eye color hazel, 5 foot something height. Again, you can't make out the inches there. And then the final item around the 5 aces photo is another yellow sticky note that reads ID photo for alias Tyron Dustsmith. So Jordan is really going to town on this, and clearly has spent a lot of time putting all this together. And she's looking for, an alias Tyron Dustsmith, maybe thinking that it's one of her former 5 aces, crew members. So at this point, we start to get to, the camera keeps panning over to the middle of the bulletin board, and to the left of the 5 aces photo, you see a taped up advertisement for some sort of engine where you can make out larger customization. And then there's another advertisement, and it's with what I only know how to describe as a Star Destroyer from Star Wars, but way less threatening and almost like plump, like it's meant to be a luxury vehicle that is, not meant for warfare like in Star Wars, but meant for comfort and design. And it reads, the advertisement with the plump Star Destroyer reads, ultimate in luxury. And next to that is another ad that says, speed so fast it should be criminal, screaming performance, silent running. And then below these ads is another picture of the large luxury ship, or the plump Star Destroyer, as I'm calling it for now, until we know more. So yeah, I thought this is just, this is here for a reason, I think. But at the very least, it's just showing you that, this exists, the types of spaceships that are designed for comfort. And it looked huge. This did not look like a small ship. This almost looked like the equivalent of a massive yacht or something like that, as we would know. So by this point, the camera keeps panning over left, and we start to get to, the left-hand side of the bulletin board. And so there's another photo of Kumail Nanjiani's character, and then there's another Hypergate chart with highlighted lines. Then there's another photo, but from a camera. You can tell someone took this from a camera, and it's of the luxury Star Destroyer. And then there's a pink sticky note. Red alert, that's 4 different color sticky notes, everyone. 4 different colors. Pink sticky note that reads painted blue, then it's crossed out. Then it says silver, crossed out, black, crossed out. And then
what does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
blue is written again as if that's the correct color. So it seems like Jordan might be tracking this specific luxury ship, and she's trying to find a specific model that was bought or sold at some point. And then she eventually finds out that blue, I guess, is the correct color of it. So underneath these is another piece of graph paper, but this time it's only been 3 hole punched. The one at the beginning had a hole punch all the way down. So again, tells us they have binders and different types of hole punches. And there's numbers and names that are linked together by various lines on this graph paper, but you just can't tell what any of it is. There's just no way to know what any of the meaning of it is. And so to the left of this and the end of the bulletin board is a yellow sheet of printed paper, and we can't make out what it is, but it has a pink sticky note on top of it that reads, "No Mars print." No Mars print. Yeah, I mean, I just don't even know what to pull from that exactly. But Jordan wrote it and put it there, so it means something. So then there's a photo of some vehicles, and one of the vehicles is circled. And the final photo is an indecipherable image with there's words on it that read "for sale." So then on top of this image that says "for sale," there's two sticky notes on it. And the first sticky note reads, quote, "His mom is dead," and it's underlined. And then it says "Colin made sale." So we know that Colin Graves, that's the name of Kumail Nanjiani's character. So it seems that's who Jordan is tracking here. And then the second sticky note reads, "Money, comma," and then there's something else that I just can't make out what it is. Both of those things are crossed out. And then I'm 99% certain it says "dead end" underneath it. That's exactly what it looks like. It's just a little bit blurry, but that's exactly what it looks like. And then, the final part of this piece of the bulletin board, there's just a piece of paper, and it looks like a receipt with letters and numbers, and it says HG-071. No way to know what that is. I'm wondering if that's the initials of someone on the dev team, people working on this, someone at Naughty Dog, a little Easter egg like that, but I don't know who that would be. Maybe we'll find out at some point in the future. So at this point, we're now all the way over to the left-hand side of the bulletin board, and this is the final part of it. And this is the upper portion of the left-hand side of the bulletin board. There's a torn image of a futuristic car. And here's something I wanted to note. You can see air vents or exhausts where the wheels should be. So to me, that confirms that this is a flying car universe, everyone. Flying car universe. And that is confirmed in just a second in the trailer as well. But I just wanted to point that out. So then right next to the torn image of the futuristic car is a Galactipole wanted poster. And what I could make out on the poster of the text is there's not really a photo, but you can make out the words "black hair, brown eyes," and then there's a section at the bottom that says "known associates, 5 aces." And then right next to the Galactipole wanted poster is a blue sticky note that reads "disorganized, acting alone?" ? I really, really looked as close as I could at this wanted poster, and I just couldn't make out any other information. The type was really small on it. But it is cool. Again, they're establishing that Galactipole exists as a law enforcement entity here. That's been established twice now just on the bulletin board. So the final item here is another photo of a futuristic car with a blue sticky note that reads, "Find his drive." And then it's crossed out and it says "wiped." So find his drive. I mean, I don't know. Maybe drive is the word they use for car. We just don't know what it is. But that covers everything on the bulletin board. And I just want to mention something crazy here. The bulletin board sequence in the trailer is 8 to 9 seconds long. And we just spent, maybe 20 minutes or so just going over what Naughty Dog put on this bulletin board. So, I just felt like we needed to talk about that because they're clearly putting a ton of time and effort into this, especially given that this is the only trailer that we have to go off for their first new, franchise in 12 or 13 years. Everything that's here is intentional and they're doing it on purpose. So it's important for us to track it. So at this point, the camera starts to pan over to Jordan's bed area. And from here, the trailer kind of moves quickly and there's not as much to find. So as the camera pans over to Jordan's bed area, you can make out covers, some blankets, you make out 2 pillows, and Jordan's kind of rummaging around, again, still looking for this remote. Feels like an eternity for us on this podcast because that bulletin board sequence had so much stuff to cover, but it's been pretty quick in the trailer. There's something hanging from the wall. It looked almost like a spacesuit or a jumpsuit or something, but it's not well lit, so we can't really see. So eventually the camera, reaches Jordan's bed, and as she's rummaging around for the remote, you can make out a pair of red headphones on the bed. Again, 2 pillows, and then above the bed, it looks like a small metal wall with 4 or 5 different colored stickies, but you can't read them at all. There's just no way to tell what they are. Then there's a shelf with some items on it, just like some knickknacks and stuff. I really couldn't make out anything that looked super significant there. So eventually Jordan finds the remote and accepts the call. And I just wanted to mention, before she accepts the call, when the anime is playing before, how it says, the video is 32 minutes and 16 seconds in, I noticed that the 32 minutes, it says 32, and then there's some sort of symbol, as if that's meant to represent minutes, but we just don't know what it is. But then with 16 seconds, it says 16S for 16 seconds. So just interesting to note that they're, thinking about how in this futuristic, universe, a time would be symbolized and talked about, and they're thinking about that. So let's see. Yeah, so, eventually Jordan finds the remote, accepts the call, and it says video pause, shows up on the CD player, the anime pauses, and a woman with black hair and an eye patch starts talking and smoking a cigarette. So again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to do an episode about everything we know about the characters so far. I'm not going to dive super deep into what they talk about, but in short, they're tracking this guy, Colin Graves, and this woman says that she thinks he's around Semperia, and they kind of just talk about that, have a back and forth about it. Eventually Jordan kind of agrees to accept the bounty, basically, and we're going to dive a lot deeper into this conversation and this character in a future episode of this podcast. In the background, though, of this woman, you can see that she's kind of standing. It almost looks like a futuristic 80s looking city on Earth or some other planet. And you can see flying cars in the background. So once again, confirmed, flying car universe, everybody. Pretty cool. So, as Jordan is taking this call, she's walking from room to room in the ship, and she's got TV screens in each room. And the camera follows her, and she can take the call from any room, which is cool. And as she's walking, I just wanted to point something out. There were a lot of plants. There were plants all over the ship, tucked on shelves. And I had 2 thoughts about this. It would make a lot of sense to have plants on a spaceship because, plants create oxygen, and obviously you would need that. You would need an oxygen source, even if you have a system that recycles oxygen. It's reasonable to assume that a recycling oxygen system wouldn't be perfect, and there would be loss over time. So you would need something that could create new oxygen and, of course, absorb carbon dioxide, which we breathe. So it could be that Jordan and anybody in this universe, they need plants on their ship for long-term survival. It could also be for some sort of mental or emotional health, which, again, if you think about what it would actually be like to live in space, and if you're doing so alone, as it appears Jordan is, on this ship, just having any type of greenery would probably be really important for people. Just to feel like you have some company, something to take care of, something to water, something to talk to, and just to have some green color as opposed to gray and dark metal everywhere. So I just thought it was really cool of Naughty Dog just to be thinking about this stuff to put in there. So then Jordan walks over to a living room area where there's an eating table sort of thing. I made out a half-eaten burrito, a coffee mug, some chips and hot sauce, and then a takeout container that reads, 100% positive it reads Macho Nacho. That's like the restaurant or the fast food place that she stopped by, the Intergalactic fast food spot that she picked up all this stuff. Then there's a bunch of other gear and knickknacks on the table, but nothing that I could really make out what it was or, look super important. So then Jordan puts on what is the iconic jacket for this. And, it's a red jacket with kind of fierce looking horse head, kind of like a knight from chess with this interesting almost sunset that's behind it on the jacket. And then she grabs some sort of space submachine gun in an area right before the cockpit and holsters it on her thigh. So space submachine gun, everyone, looks pretty cool. And right before entering the cockpit, I noticed there's this blue box with 2 red stripes on it to the left of the cockpit door. And it has what looks like Japanese lettering and the word co-pilot right along with the Japanese lettering. And then underneath that, I definitely made out the word industries, but there's something else. It looks almost like Subuchex. And so it looks like it's saying Subuchex Industries. So whatever it is, what we can tell is it's a co-pilot system from some sort of a corporate entity that Jordan has on the ship. And we just don't know what any of that means or if it's important yet. So by this point, we're really towards the end of, everything this podcast episode has to cover on this trailer. But Jordan enters the cockpit. The conversation with the woman with the eye patch is ongoing. Eventually that kind of concludes and, Jordan takes on the bounty basically for Colin Graves. And in the cockpit, this is the coolest part of the trailer. You see this like really sleek, refined cockpit with cool lights everywhere. And you can make out a bunch of different, sci-fi spaceship stuff, screen tracking, navigation, various controls, power buttons here and there. So I love that. I just ate all that up. And then when Jordan looks at the screen of the eye patch woman that she's taking this call with, above the screen is a bunch of info on Colin Graves. And it seems like more specifically the bounty. And here's what it says. And again, you kind of have to look closely to catch it all. It says Colin Graves. Then it says the reward. And it says 1,600,000. But it says 1,600,000. So, we don't know, is that like galactic credits or we don't know what the currency is, but it's, 1,600,000 that we would know. It says affiliation 5 aces. Then it says client ISMW Terra Sector. Oof, that's just fascinating. I can't wait for this game. I can't wait to dive into what all this is. Then it says threat level 7. Threat level 7. That's interesting. Does it go up to 10? Is that 7 out of 10? Or is it, does the threat level go up to 5? And they gave him a 7 because 7 out of 5, that's super dangerous. I guess, we'll find out. So at this point, Jordan claims the bounty, basically. And so then, Jordan has a moment where she looks kind of worried and she's clearly very contemplative. And one of the final details for this episode I want to point out, in the chair that she's sitting in, you can make out the model of the spaceship that she's driving, 984 Tempest NDX. That's actually on the top of the chair. And I just want to say this chair totally looks like a gaming chair. Looks like the sickest gaming chair you've seen and super comfortable. So jealous of Jordan that she gets that. So then, Jordan powers up the ship. She plays a song from a real life 80s band, Pet Shop Boys. And it's a song, It's a Sin, from their album Actually. And I just want to say the song is awesome. I'd never heard it before this trailer. I went and I listened to the whole album from Pet Shop Boys. It was released in 1986 or maybe 87, one of those two. Really cool album. The song is great. And I noticed that as she pops in the CD for Pet Shop Boys album Actually, it lists, like the song number and all this stuff. And it lists It's a Sin as track 7 on the CD that she's playing. And I just wanted to tell everyone, I went and checked, and that is actually track 7 on the original album. Actually, from Pet Shop Boys in the 80s. So I thought that was really cool. And then, I think everyone kind of noticed there was Sony on the music player. It said that. One of the last things I mentioned here is that Jordan blasts off the spaceship, and it seems like they show you her feet kind of on a gas pedal. You can't tell if that's actually what makes the spaceship blast off, or if that's what makes kind of like controls in her hands like fold down to her. But I realized from that, I don't think I've ever actually seen a spaceship where there's pedals like gas and brakes like we know in the modern day before. So I thought that was cool. And when they show you that, that's where you see Jordan wearing the Adidas, the red Adidas sneakers, which looked pretty sick. And the final thing I want to mention that you might have missed watching this trailer, it shows you Jordan on Semperia, and right away this badass looking robot pops up. It's carrying this huge red electro sword sort of thing. Jordan does this sick run at it and everything. If you watch the trailer, you can't miss it. If you haven't watched the trailer, totally go check it out. It's awesome. And I noticed on the robot's right shoulder is Ancient Semperium script, and it's on its shoulder and on its at least one of its thighs. And it's Ancient Semperium script because the trailer starts with some Ancient Semperium script, and it tells you and then it translates it and tells you this is Ancient Semperium writing. So you definitely know that the Semperiums, whoever they are, they created this robot, and it's there, and Jordan's fighting it. And so at this point, that's really, I hope, and I like to think that is everything that Naughty Dog put in this trailer. I can't believe that we're coming up on 52 minutes of recording time for this podcast episode, because this trailer is 4 minutes and 33 seconds long. And really, it's shorter than that if you take out, the end and just some of the other things that aren't the trailer itself, really. So they really just jam-packed this trailer full of stuff. And the reason I wanted to cover it is, I just heard a lot of people saying that, there wasn't anything in the trailer. That I was like, oh, it's just her shaving her head and she takes a call, and then, you just see her on this planet and that's it. And I see where people are coming from on that, but there is a lot more to dive into here. So that's a wrap on our first episode of the world's very first unofficial Intergalactic Heretic Prophet podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Zink. Please leave us a review on Spotify or the Apple Podcast Store. You can leave comments in the Spotify episode, and I'll read them at the mid-break of the next episode. You can reach out to us on any of our social media platforms listed in the description, or send us an email. Thanks for listening, and if you're going anywhere near the Nameless Void, make sure you bring extra supplies.